Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, President. President, my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister and the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Farrell. Does the Albanese government believe there are specific risks to the safety of Australians that result from travelling through Doha Airport?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Senator Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Birmingham for his question. I personally have just travelled through Doha Airport on my way back from a holiday a few weeks ago, and I personally don't see any risks. I think the issue that the senator is referring to is an event that occurred some time ago, where at the same time that an Australian flight was due to fly out of Doha, there was a terrible incident, of course, occurred where a newborn baby was left in a bin in the airport, and for whatever reason, a decision was made by the Qatari authorities to take some action against a number of Australian women who were on the plane flying back to Australia. The Transport Minister this morning made reference to this issue when she was releasing her green paper on the aviation industry at Canberra Airport, so that was one of the issues that she has
Thank you, Minister
raised.
Farrell. The time for answering has expired. Senator Birmingham, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. And President, noting the statements the Minister's referred to of the Minister for Transport, that the incident at Hamad International Airport, quote, obviously was a context of the decision that I made, and given the seriousness with which the Minister for Transport must view that issue and the consequences on her current decision-making about future travel and future flights, has the government changed or updated the travel advice for Australians who are travelling through Doha?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. Thank Senator Birmingham for that question. I'm a bit unclear about the timeline you're talking about. If you're indicating, has the government made any changes to its advice since the Minister made her statement this morning? I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm very happy to make some inquiries to find out whether or not there has been any change. I'm not aware of any change that's been made, but in light of the fact that you've asked me this question, I will follow up and see whether any changes have been made to this or any other advice that we might give Australian travellers.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Farrell, beg your pardon, sorry, Senator Birmingham, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. If the issues cited by the Minister for Transport are of such concern as to have informed and driven her rejection of the Qatar Airways application, why are Albanese government ministers, including yourself, Minister Farrell, publicly encouraging Qatar to put more flights into secondary airports and more seats on in its existing landing slots? Is safety a real concern or just a smokescreen? Do you want more people flying through Doha or less people flying through Doha?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Birmingham for his question. Look, I don't think there's any inconsistencies here. I am advised that the travel advice remains to exercise normal travel precautions. So, to the best of my knowledge, in answer to your earlier question, we have not changed the advice, other than to say that to exercise normal travel precautions. My response, particularly to the issue of Qatar, was to say that if they want additional flights into Australia, then there are opportunities for them to use existing rights. And one of those rights, as you well know, Senator Birmingham, is to fly into airports like the Adelaide Airport, like the Canberra Airport, like Broome, like Cairns, like Avalon.
Sorry, Minister, the time for answering has expired. Senator Sterle.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Trade and Tourism, Senator Farrell. Last month, the Australian government announced that China would remove the 80.5% anti-dumping and countervailing duties on Australian barley. It has been reported that the Chinese duties on Australian barley effectively blocked exports to that market worth nearly $1 billion prior to the duties being imposed. This outcome has been welcomed by Australian grain producers and exporters, as China has historically been a very important export market for malting barley over many decades. Could the ministry outline what action the Albanese government has taken to pave the way for the re-entry of Australian barley to the Chinese market?
Thank you, Senator Sterle. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. Can I thank Senator Sterle? He's a great Western Australian senator and a great interest in this issue for his constituents in Western Australia. And the lifting of the 80.5% tariff on Australian barley exports last month by Chinese authorities has highlighted the benefits of the Albanese Labor government's approach to engaging in mature dialogue to stabilise the relationship with our largest trading partner. This year, I've had 3 meetings with the Chinese Commerce Minister, Minister Weng Wentao, including travelling to Beijing in May to co-chair the first in-person meeting between Australia and Chinese trade ministers since 2019. In that meeting, we agreed to set up dialogue under our existing free trade agreement and other platforms to resolve outstanding trade issues. Bilateral engagement at all levels is intensifying, including this week, where the 7th Australia-China high-level dialogue is taking place. Last week, I, along with Ministers Watt and King, were pleased to witness the first Western Australian barley shipment to China in 3 years, departing from the Kwinana grain terminal. Yes, Senator Watt, delivering for agriculture in the great state of Western Australia. No, I know you don't like it. I know you don't like them getting their barley back into China, but under the Albanese Labor government, stewardship,
Order.
Australian barley...
Order. Senator Canavan, I've just called the chamber to order. Minister, please continue.
Australian barley exporters now have an opportunity to re-enter the Chinese market much earlier than if we'd continued to prosecute our case through the World Trade Organisation. This government is delivering positive outcomes for all of our farmers and regional Australia, especially Western Australia.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. Senator Sterle, first supplementary.
Yes, President. The removal of Chinese import duties on Australian barley is a welcome development. Indeed. But trade impediments imposed by China are affecting the export of other Australian products, including wine, lobster and red meat. What is the Albanese government doing to remove these remaining trade impediments, Minister?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Sterle again for his first supplementary question. Progress is being made, but there's still some way to go until we see normal trade resume across the board with China. The Albanese government is working hard to remove remaining trade impediments, including those affecting wine, lobster, red meat and hay. On wine, I've been very clear that when engaging with my Chinese counterpart that we expect a similar process to barley to be followed to remove tariffs on wine. On lobster, red meat and hay, the government has been actively engaging, including at a technical level, to resolve impediments blocking Australian exports. So far, dialogue rather than bluster has proven effective. We believe that it's in both Australia's and Chinese interests for all trade impediments to be removed.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. Senator Sterle, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. In addition to barley, there have been several positive trade developments this year with China, including the resumption of Australian exports of coal, cotton, copper ores and concentrates, and the lifting of quarantine restrictions on timber logs. While these developments are welcome, can the government detail what work has been undertaken to support market diversification for all exporters?
Thank you, Senator Sterle. Minister Farrell.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Order. Order.
Thank you. Thank you, President, and thanks, Senator Sterle, for his second supplementary question. A priority of the Albanese government has been to work to stabilise our relationship with China, by far our largest trading partner. But recent experience demonstrates that over-reliance on any single trading partner comes with its risks. The Albanese government has been encouraging Australian business to continue with their diversification plans and to take advantage of new and emerging markets. A key element of the government's trade diversification agenda is entering into new and comprehensive free trade agreements. The United Kingdom and the Indian markets, well, you never got them through. You might have got the agreement, but you never got them through the parliament, and we did. We did, and I know you hate that. But we now offer opportunities for Australian producers and traders,
Thank you, Minister
and we
Farrell.
are in tough negotiations
has
to
expired.
conclude the...
Senator Cash.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Workplace Relations, Senator Watt. In an interview this week with Andrew Clennell on Sky News, when asked whether service contractors were excluded from the labour hire provisions of Labor's IR bill, Minister Burke said, and I quote, completely, service contractors have been deliberately excluded. Can the minister guarantee that there are no circumstances under which service contractors could be subject to a regulated labour hire arrangement and that they are, as the minister has stated, completely, deliberately excluded?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. And it's always good to get a question about workplace relations from the minister who was in charge of these portfolios when a police raid on union officers was leaked from a minister's office. It's always good to get a question about workplace relations. Straight to the history.
Senator
Straight
Watt.
to the history. Straight to the record.
Senator Watt. Order. Order. Senator Watt, when I call you to order, I expect you to sit. Senator Scarr.
President, personal reflection. I've previously taken exactly this point of order when Senator Watt has raised this matter. It is contrary to what the federal court found, and Senator Watt should withdraw, as he has previously.
Minister Gallagher.
On the point of order, I've listened to Senator Scarr, but I think that is an established fact that's been clear and on the public record.
Order.
Pretty sure it is.
Order. Senator Scarr. Senator Scarr. Order. Senator Scarr, I heard your point of order. I advised Senator Watt not to be disorderly. I then invited to hear Minister Gallagher's, and there was disorder. That is inappropriate and it's disrespectful. I will seek some advice on your point of order. Thank you. Senator Watt, I was going to call you to order prior to Senator Scarr jumping to order to remind you to get to the question. I am not fully aware of the matters that Senator Scarr has raised, and I invite you to withdraw those comments and get to the point of your response. Thank you.
President.
Thank you.
The direct answer to the question from Senator Cash is that, as Minister Burke has made clear on many occasions, the government accepts that there are legitimate uses for labour hire in the workforce, particularly areas such as surge, temporary replacement or specialised workforces. But as I was saying the other day when Senator Cash asked me a question about this, if an employer has an enterprise agreement and agrees to certain minimum rates of pay, then that employer should not be able to use loopholes within our industrial relations laws to undercut the wages they have agreed to. And that's what this is about.
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
A point of order in relation to direct relevance. I quoted the minister and I asked Senator Watt quite clearly, are there any circumstances under which service contractors could be subjected to a labour hire arrangement?
Thank
the
you,
minister
Senator,
is
Senator
telling
Cash,
the truth.
Senator
the answer is
Senator Cash, there is no need to continue on. I will rule on your point of order and I will remind order on my right. And I will remind the minister of your question. Minister.
Thanks, President. And the next point I was going to make, until Senator Cash interrupted, was that if the arrangement is to provide a service other than labour, that will be completely different and the Fair Work Commission will be able to exclude them. So there will be circumstances where, because of specialised arrangements and specialised labour, the Fair Work Commission will have the ability to exclude those forms of— well, there's a lot of if you knew anything about industrial relations— I take the interjection from Senator Birmingham. If you knew the slightest thing about industrial relations law, you would know that the Fair Work Commission has discretion to decide many things. And Senator Cash should know that as a former industrial relations practitioner.
Order. Senator Cash, your leader is on his feet. Senator Birmingham.
President, point of order on direct relevance. And Senator Cash asked a question seeking a specific response to a very specific quote from Minister Burke about whether service providers were completely, deliberately excluded. Now, in terms of the minister being directly relevant, and this was particularly relevant to the exchange just had between the minister and I across the chamber, it sounds like he is watering down the minister's statement that they are not completely, deliberately excluded.
You've now moved on to
and
a debating point.
I would invite the minister to be crystal clear on that
Senator
before
Birmingham,
he gives condescending lectures across the chamber.
Order. Order. Order across the chamber. As all senators in this place are aware, if there are interjections, the minister may take those interjections. He took your interjection, Senator Birmingham, and he had started to be directly relevant to the question. Senator Cash, you were very close then to me asking you to withdraw about you used the word lies. I'm just asking people to be mindful of their language. I am asking all senators to be mindful of their language. Minister Watt, please continue.
Thank you. So, to make it even more clear for Senator Birmingham and Senator Cash, the Closing Loopholes Bill gives service contractors a clear pathway for demonstrating that their arrangements are not those the government aims to address with this measure. But let's be clear about what this is about.
Order.
What this is about is we have a coalition who cannot get over the fact that low wages are not the deliberate design feature of the economic policy of an Australian government.
Senator Watt, order. Order on my left. Senator Ruston and Senator Cash. Minister Watt, please continue. Thank you. Senator Cash, second supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, proposed section 306G of the bill provides a clear exemption from the regulated labour hire arrangement for training and short-term arrangements. Given Minister Burke's statement that completely service contractors have been deliberately excluded, can the minister please advise the Senate what section of the bill provides the specific exclusion for service contractors that Minister Burke has referred to?
Thank you, Senator Cash, and I inadvertently called that your second. It was your first supplementary. Minister Watt.
As I say, Senator Cash, I don't have the bill in front of me, but the Closing Loopholes Bill gives service contractors a clear pathway for demonstrating that their arrangements are not those the government aims to address with this measure, and I've already indicated what the intention is here. But the intention of the opposition in this debate, of course, is to keep the loopholes wide open.
Minister, please resume your seats. Senator Cash.
Thank you. Direct relevance. I asked the minister a simple and very, very clear question. What section of the bill provides the specific exclusion for service contractors? If the minister does not know, I am more than happy for him to take it on notice.
Thank you, Senator Cash. You also talked about short-term contracts. I believe that the minister is being relevant, but I will continue to listen particularly to your point of order on direct relevance. Minister.
Thank you, President. So, as I say, what this is really about is a coalition that still hasn't gotten over the fact they lost the last election. They can't get over the fact that there's a government that wants to close the loopholes. I mentioned earlier in the week that Senator Cash previously was saying that IR changes would take us back to the dark ages. But why stop there, Senator Cash? Why not say that it's going to take us back to the ice age? Oh, that's right. You did that by freezing wages for 10 years. We had frozen wages in your ice age.
Please resume your seat. Order. Minister Watt, please continue.
Why not go back even further to the Jurassic Age? Because there's certainly a lot of dinosaurs over there when it comes to workplace relations policy. Dark Ages, Ice Age, Jurassic Age, take your pick. What we know is that you are the people who want to keep those loopholes open, who want to keep workers being exploited and want to support employers who are undercutting their competitors.
Thank you. Senator McGrath, that was incredibly disorderly to continue to shout out. Senator Cash, second supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, why has Minister Burke given himself up to 32 clauses in the government's new IR bill which give him extraordinarily broad ministerial powers to change the laws with the stroke of a pen, including powers to rope in even more businesses if he doesn't like a decision that has been made by the Fair Work Commission to exclude those businesses?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Watt.
Well, it wouldn't be a Thursday afternoon in the Senate without a new scare campaign from Senator Cash, would it? Extraordinary stroke of a pen, dark ages. I mean, seriously, this nonsense that you pull out every time we want to do something about fixing wages, it is laughable. It is laughable. And in answer to your previous question, Senator Cash, take a look at section 306, capital 8A, B.
Senator Watt. Order. Senator Cash. Senator Cash. Senator Mackenzie.
Just on a point of order, Madam President, the minister needs to direct his comments to Senator Cash through the chair.
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. I will remind the minister for that, but I'd particularly like to remind the chamber that you all need to be respectful and orderly and not shout out. Minister Watt.
So, as I say, President, Senator Cash has a track record of coming into this chamber or going into the newsrooms and making stuff up when it comes to industrial relations reforms. We've got, as I say, we've had dark ages. We were going to have supermarket shelves that were empty. We were going to be closing down the economy.
Please resume your seat. Senator Cash, again, those constant interjections are disrespectful and they're disorderly. I would ask you to listen in respectful silence. Minister Watt.
Next week, I predict Senator Cash will be in here saying that this will end the weekend. Oh, that's right, you've already done that one. After that, it'll end the backyard barbecue. Oh, that's right, you've already done that one. Every scare campaign you have ever made up about industrial relations changes is wrong because wages are moving again under the Albanese government, and we want that to continue.
Order. Order. Senator Mackenzie, we are moving on. Senator Shoebridge.
Oh, thanks very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Defence. With opposition growing in the US Congress to passing any legislation that allows Australia even one Virginia-class nuclear submarine because of an entrenched lack of capability in the US industry to build enough submarines for their use, what is the Albanese government's plan B for when no subs are approved and the first pillar of AUKUS sinks?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Shoebridge for his question. And I guess it's interesting that Senator Hanson-Young or Senator Pocock hasn't asked that question because, of course, the prospect of Australia building those submarines in in South Australia is going to be a wonderful opportunity.
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Shoebridge.
This is not about the submarines.
Senator Shoebridge,
it's relevance.
Senator Shoebridge,
it's
why,
relevance.
Senator Shoebridge, why are you on your feet?
Because I would ask you to bring the minister
Okay,
to...
so you're on a point of order.
Correct.
Then you need to stand and indicate it's a point of order.
Point of order.
Thank you.
The minister is not being relevant. The question is not about boats that might be built from 2040 in South Australia, which he seems to be fixated on. It's the boats that you're not going to get out of the United States from 2030 built in the US.
I'll remind Minister Farrell of your question. Minister Farrell.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, President. I simply don't agree with the fundamental premise of your question, Senator Shoebridge. We've reached an agreement, Australia, the United States and the United Kingdom have reached an agreement on a program to increase our defence capabilities in a more dangerous world. Perhaps you haven't noticed, Senator Shoebridge, but a small country like Ukraine has just been invaded illegally and immorally by...
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Shoebridge.
Point of order. The question at no point referenced the Ukraine, but is about congressional approval for Virginia-class submarines being made available to Australia. Could you please direct the minister to the question?
The minister is answering your question. You may not like the answer, but he nevertheless has answered the question. Minister Farrell, please continue.
Can I say this? We've got a fantastic ambassador in the United States, in the former Prime Minister, Prime Minister Rudd, and of course,
Order. Senator Canavan and McKenzie. Order. Minister Farrell, please.
And I know that our ambassador in the United States has ensured that AUKUS has strong bipartisan and bicameral support right across Congress. During the Osman discussions, Secretary Austin and Secretary Blinken were confident there will continue to be strong bipartisan support for this initiative.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Shoebridge, first supplementary.
Minister, with the US Congress now calling for Australia to pour even more money into US manufacturing and jobs, on top of the $3 billion Australia has already committed to US shipbuilding, is that what Prime Minister Albanese is taking to Washington? Billions more Australian dollars for US jobs?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. Thank Senator Shoebridge for his first supplementary question. What Prime Minister Albanese will be taking to the United States is goodwill between Australia and our most important military ally, the United States. An arrangement, I might say, which was formed in the darkest days of World War II between John Curtin and President Roosevelt. In the world in which we live, Senator Shoebridge, we need allies and.
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Shoebridge.
Point of order on relevance. This isn't a history lesson from Don's childhood. This is about whether the Prime Minister is taking billions more dollars of Australian taxpayers' money to bail out the US shipbuilding industry.
Senator Shoebridge, I will remind the Minister of your question, and I will remind you that you refer to people in this place by their correct titles. Minister Farrell.
Even Senator Shoebridge, even I'm not that old, but I do understand Australian history. I I like reading
Thank
Australian...
you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Shoebridge, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for that scintillating response. The US Congressional Research Office has also proposed a division of labour plan in which Australia never receives a Virginia-class submarine. Instead, the US would station their nuclear submarines in Australia under their control, and we pay the US for them to use us as a parking lot. Is that Prime Minister Albanese's plan B?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Shoebridge for his second supplementary question. No.
Senator Green. Order. 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 Senator Green. Senator Birmingham, I have a senator on her feet for the next question. Senator Green.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government, Senator Watt. I refer to the Albanese Labor government's commitment to reform Australia's aviation sector so it delivers for the Australian economy, workers and consumers. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on this commitment to a more competitive aviation sector while at the same time securing Australian jobs?
Thank you. Senator Green. Minister Watt.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Green. And I know, being based in Cairns, you understand the importance of a competitive aviation sector that delivers to tourists, to workers, to local economies. And finally, we have a federal government prepared to deliver. I know that Senator Green, like so many on this side of the chamber, understands the importance of Australia's aviation sector to the economic prosperity of our nation and to the lives of all Australians who rely on this critical service. But as we all know, and as all of you over there know, the previous government left the aviation policy space in tatters. They've had a lot to say about aviation this week, but let's not forget it was the coalition government that gave billions of dollars, billions of taxpayer dollars to Qantas for nothing in return. It was the coalition government that stood by as Virgin collapsed into administration, only for it to be snatched up by foreign private equity. It was the coalition government that over 10 years oversaw the mass outsourcing of jobs and a labour hire mess that drove down wages and conditions across the aviation sector.
Please resume your seat. Order on my left. Minister Watt, please continue.
But the list goes on, President. It was also the coalition government that commissioned the Harris Review into Sydney Airport, only to spend almost 2 years sitting on it, leaving it to us to sort out. And it was the coalition government that cut JobKeeper from Donata workers, as some of our senators know very well, and left those families in the lurch. So today is a very important day, because today the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government, Catherine King, released the Aviation Green Paper. This is the first step in reforming the sector and cleaning up the mess in our aviation sector that was left by those opposite. The Aviation Green Paper is an important step in developing a white paper which will set the policy direction of the sector out to 2050. The government is seeking outcomes that deliver a more competitive aviation sector while at the same time securing Australian jobs. We're also looking at stronger consumer protections, improvements to complaint handling processes and improved accessibility for consumers living with disability.
Expired. Senator Green, first supplementary.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Minister, for that answer. I note that the Albanese Labor government is committed to an aviation sector with strong consumer protections in place. How is the Albanese Labor government looking to enhance the experience of customers in Australia's aviation sector?
Thank you, Senator Green. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Green. Well, unlike 10 years of coalition government, the Albanese government wants an aviation sector that maintains Australia's world-leading safety and security standards and provides secure jobs now and into the future. A sector needs to be reliable, competitive and affordable, supported by a robust consumer rights framework. And that's why the Aviation Green Paper, something the last coalition government never bothered to get around to, looks to stronger consumer protections, improvements to complaint handling processes and improved accessibility for consumers living with disability. Not one of those things did the coalition deal with in 10 years in government, for all of their road to Damascus conversion on matters of aviation. Through this process, we are also seeking to understand whether options pursued in other jurisdictions, such as a customer rights centre, a charter or a stronger ombudsman model, would deliver benefits to Australia's aviation sector. Every Australian travelling by plane here in Australia or overseas deserves to be safe and respected, and that's why we're taking these issues seriously.
Senator Green, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, as you and I both know, Australians living in remote and regional Australia rely heavily on a strong aviation sector to support strong regional communities. Why is reform to Australia's aviation sector so important, particularly to regional communities?
Senator McKenzie. Senator McKenzie, I'm not calling you to answer the question. Senator Watt.
Thank you, President. It is ironic that Senator McKenzie should be asking where the Harris Review is, because it's actually sat with the coalition for 2 years without any action being taken whatsoever. But you're right, Senator Green. Some of us over here actually understand that access to affordable air services is a key contributor to the livability of regional Australia, and it is essential that regional services remain viable. Aviation plays an important role servicing the needs of regional and remote communities. This includes access to a range of essential services, such as healthcare and education. The Albanese government also recognises that now and over coming years it will be critical to leverage the economic shifts underway across the world for the benefit of Australia's regions. So a strong regional aviation sector is critical to achieving that vision. Through this process, this Green Paper process, we very much want to hear directly from those Australians in regional, remote and rural communities who rely on aviation, so I would encourage all who have an interest to share their perspectives via the department's website.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator Tyrrell.
Thank you, President. My question is for the Minister representing the Minister for Education, Senator Watt. Mandatory unpaid student placements are placing severe financial stress on students. We're saying to prospective nurses and teachers that unless you can live with no income for a few months, then you can't do the job. And for the many students who are working part-time to support their studies, they have to take leave from their paid work to do this unpaid work. That's up to 25 weeks of the year where you are prevented from earning any money to pay your bills. Does the Minister agree that the work students do on unpaid placements is valued and should be recognised?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Watt.
Thank you very much for that, Senator Tyrrell. I've just been advised I understand this is an issue that you've taken an active interest in, and appreciate the opportunity to provide a little bit more information to you. I don't know whether you have had the opportunity to discuss these matters directly with Minister Clare, the Education Minister. I'm sure that he and his office would be very happy to provide you with a briefing about it. But what I can say is that I know this is an issue that he's working on. He shares your concern about the current arrangements in this field, and so that therefore he has got some policy work underway to deal with that. I also understand that this is something that will be is being considered in the context of the government's employment white paper. That is being led by the Treasurer, but there are a range of different portfolios, including mine for that matter, who've had some input into that employment white paper. And it will be looking at a whole range of issues to do with the future employment of Australians, the employment arrangements that should sit around that, and the issues that you have raised will also be considered in that context. So the government has a couple of different pieces of work underway to examine these issues. We're not at a point yet where we have a solution to them, but I'm sure, as I say, the relevant ministers would be more than happy to involve you in that process and get your perspectives. If there are local students, workers, businesses who are affected by this, I'd certainly encourage you to put forward their views to those ministers as well, so that we can take those views into account in coming up with those policy solutions. So the Treasurer, I think, is on the record having said that the employment white paper will be delivered this calendar year. I imagine that means that there won't be too much longer to wait before there's some concrete information out there. I don't have a time frame for the work that Minister Clare has got underway, but I'm sure that it's something that he's attending to as a priority as well.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Tyrrell, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Tasmania currently has a shortfall of approximately 100 teachers. Many of the degrees that require placements like nursing, teaching and social work are areas with critical workforce shortages right now. We know that students are dropping out of these degrees because they can't afford to do the required placement. Do you agree that mandatory unpaid placements are contributing to these workforce shortages?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Watt.
I think, Senator Tyrrell, you've named, I think, some of the sectors where this has been an issue, and talking with my colleagues now, there are other sectors as well. I think the aged care sector, a range of health professions, education sectors, this has been an issue. I guess I'm not really in a position to give you my personal opinion on this, because these are issues that are currently being examined within government. But I think you can take it as an assurance that the fact that these are being looked at by the government indicates that we do recognise there are some problems here. So, as I say, over the coming months, through those couple of different policy processes I've talked about, we do hope to come up with some answers to these problems. And as I said before, I'd certainly encourage you to become involved in those processes if you're not already.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator Tyrrell, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. I've just got a text. I'm having a meeting with him next week. Students are also required to take on a help debt for the cost of their unpaid placement. Basically, the student isn't being paid, their training provider isn't being paid, but the university is being paid. Does the minister believe it's fair that universities get paid a full unit's fee for a course they don't have to actually deliver?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Tyrrell. I'm not personally aware of that, not being the relevant minister, but I'm sure Minister Clare is well and truly on top of those issues. Again, the issues that you're talking about are also very much an issue, not just in the kind of sectors that use tertiary education as their education source, but it's an issue in the vet sector as well. And I know that that's something that you've taken an interest in before as well, and the importance of the vet sector to Tasmania. So, again, all I can really say is that this is something that crosses different sectors. It clearly crosses different portfolios, and I'm pleased to hear that you've got that meeting with Minister Clare next week. That's prompt service for you, isn't it? And I'm hopeful that you'll be able to have a constructive discussion with him.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator McKenzie.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. In defending the government's policy of protecting a certain carrier and slugging travellers with high-cost airfares, the Prime Minister has repeatedly claimed, and I quote, "In Australia we have the most open aviation market in the world, bar none." That was on ABC Radio on the 31st of August, and again on Sky News. It in fact is the most competitive market in the world. The government's 2-month late aviation green paper, released by the Minister for Transport today, says on page 26, and I quote, "Australia's domestic aviation sector is highly concentrated, with a few market participants. Combined, the two groups control 95.1% of the Australian domestic market." Minister, who is correct, the Prime Minister or Minister King's aviation green paper?
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, and I thank Senator McKenzie for the question, and I don't see any inconsistency in those statements at all. But I am happy to talk about the issue of aviation and competition and the fact that we are cleaning up a mess that we've inherited. Yet again, let's think of all of the areas that we are actually having to deal with after a decade of failure. I don't even know what you were all doing when you came to work, but it obviously was not very much, because we inherited an energy crisis, we have pressures in health, we have pressures in infrastructure, we have pressures in aviation.
Please resume your seat. Senator Birmingham.
President, I think this is a very clear case of direct relevance, and I'm sure I could almost feel it in your body language that if I hadn't stood when I did, you were about to draw the minister to the question, that in the first 30 seconds to decide to pivot purely to a commentary on the previous government, when asked solely a question that covered statements of the Prime Minister about the aviation market, a quote from the Aviation Green Paper, and sought clarification between the consistency of those statements. The question was entirely exclusively about the aviation market, its competitiveness or its concentration.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Senator Watt, on a point of order.
Point of order, President. You may well be aware of this, but anyone listening to Senator Gallagher's answer would realise that she answered it in the first 3 or 4 seconds, and she's obviously entitled to carry on her answer as she chooses after that.
Order. Order. Interjections across the chamber. Senator Watt. I have the Leader of the Opposition on his feet. Senator Birmingham.
Thank you, President. Just to Senator Watt's point, it is not within order for a minister, if they have answered the question, to then go and speak about any other topic of zero relevance to the question they were asked. An answer to a question in its entirety needs to be directly relevant. Context, as previous presidents have ruled, can be provided, but the minister was very plainly not providing context to a question specific about the aviation market and its competitiveness.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. I will seek the advice of the clerk. Thank you. So I am advised that the minister did answer the question in the first few seconds of her response, but she has strayed, and I will remind her of your point of order. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and thank you for that direction, Chair. I will come back to the aviation green paper, which was referenced in Senator Mackenzie's question. It has been released today, and it is the next step in setting up the sector's long-term future, and it is part of cleaning up the mess, as I said, that we inherited from those opposite that clearly did nothing in the last decade. We want a more competitive sector, one with stronger protections and better accessibility for those with a disability. We want to keep our world-leading safety record and an industry
Minister
that—
Gallagher, please resume your seat. Senator Mackenzie.
Point of order, Madam President. The answer that the minister gave was that she saw no inconsistency between the Prime Minister's comments and the Green Paper's comments, between most competitive in the world and one of the most concentrated. She has literally just proved the inconsistency between the two comments.
Senator Mackenzie, that's an indulgence. It's a debating point. Minister Gallagher, please continue. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much. And as I said, this aviation green paper is to essentially look at how we create and deliver the best aviation sector that we can, both internationally and domestically. And it's because of the failure of the former government that we are starting this work now, because it hasn't been done, and it wasn't done under their term. And so it is right that we have the green paper, we go out and have further consultations, and then there'll be a white paper to ensure that we can get the best outcomes across the board. And that's for the aviation industry itself, it's for consumers, it's to ensure that we're ensuring competition and promoting competition where we can in a complex industry that operates—
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Mackenzie, first supplementary.
Your former Treasurer disagrees. When asked about airline competition at the National Press Club on the 29th of August 2023, the Assistant Minister for Competition, Dr Lee, said, and I quote, "I look to Europe with its range of low-cost carriers and see what looks like an even more competitive ecosystem. So moving us toward that, I think, is the long-term goal." Minister, who is correct? Is the Prime Minister right when he says Australia has the most competitive market in the world, or is the Competition Assistant Minister correct?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Gallagher.
Well, again, both of those statements are correct, and well, they are. Like, I know it's very— I know you can just put them together and put your spin on it. But we are looking at ways to improve competition. That's why we've got the work that the Treasurer and the Assistant Treasurer are doing in the Treasury. It's why we're looking at the Green Paper and then the White
Senator
Paper.
Mackenzie.
And there are clearly and obviously areas that everyone involved in the aviation industry wants to see whether there's room to improve. But this government will actually talk to people, we will negotiate, we will consult, and we will deliver a plan, unlike those opposite that sat on reports and reviews that they inherited, sat on them for 2 years and did nothing and provided no direction. And that is not the position this government takes. We're doing the work, we're talking with all of those involved, and we will deliver the best aviation system that this country deserves and expects.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Mackenzie, second supplementary.
Well, I'd like to thank the minister for giving some context that she actually backs the Green Paper commentary that there is room for improvement, that we are a concentrated aviation market and we do need to get more competitive, in direct contrast to the Prime Minister's public statements. Minister, why is the Albanese government protecting a major airline whilst punishing Australian travellers with high-cost airfares in the middle of a cost-of-living crisis?
Thank you. Senator Mackenzie. Minister.
Well, we're doing no such thing. We're doing no such thing. And I think you allude to the decision by the Transport Minister that she made around Qatar's request for extra flights. But I would point out, and I know it's convenient to ignore it, and we've gone through it in this place and we've gone through it in the House, that we have numbers of flights being increased by a number of international carriers. We have over 1,800 international flights coming in and out of Australia in the last week. Flights are increasing, capacity on those flights are increasing, and we have existing international carriers that are adding flights and adding capacity on those flights. So I completely reject the assertion in Senator Mackenzie's question. The aviation industry is recovering post-COVID. More flights are coming, more seats are available, and we will see prices come down.
Senator Babet.
Thank you, President. My question is for the Minister representing the Health Minister, Minister Gallagher. Minister, are you aware of the status of the WHO's Article 59 International Health Regulations Amendments and the 3 other substantive pandemic preparedness documents? The UN's Pandemic Prevention, Preparedness and Response Political Declaration Zero draft, the WHO's proposed 307 International Health Regulations Amendments and the WHO CA+. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Babet for the question and for the advance warning of his question. I do appreciate that, and I am aware of those documents. The government is committed to strengthening international cooperation on pandemic preparedness and reflect the lessons learned from the global response to COVID-19 to ensure that we are well placed to deal with challenges that come in the future. We are actively engaged in 3 separate but linked negotiations on an international instrument on pandemic prevention, preparedness and response, amendments to the International Health Regulations 2005 and the Political Declaration of the United Nations General Assembly's high-level meeting on pandemic prevention, preparedness and response. The negotiations on the pandemic instrument and amendment to the International Health Regulations are currently underway and are due to conclude in May next year. And it's anticipated that a final version of the Political Declaration will be adopted by Member States at a high-level meeting on pandemic prevention, preparedness and response in New York later in September. And these processes are part of an overall package intending to strengthen international cooperation to minimise the risk of international health threats such as COVID-19 can pose to Australia. We know that the global health threats are most likely to arise overseas, and having a strong global health system will help ensure Australia and the world is better prepared for the future. But let me be clear that the proposed treaty will not undermine Australia's sovereignty in respect to health policy and will not operate to prevail over Australian law. The WHO and UN have no legal authority to force Australians to take any action, and any negotiated commitments would need to be reflected in Australian laws passed by this parliament for them to become legally binding. The government commenced an online public consultation on the 7th of August 2023 to allow interested Australians the ability to contribute their views on the proposed agreements.
Senator Babet, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, and I think I know what you're going to say next, but are you aware of Article 59, Item 3 of the 2005 IHRs, which is repeated unamended in the Article 59 International Health Regulations Amendments? Do you agree that this sub-article places a positive obligation upon Australia to amend our domestic legislation in accordance with any future IHR amendments if those amendments are not rejected by Australia?
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank the Senator for the question. The impact of amendments to Article 59 are procedural in nature. They reduce the period of time for entry into force for any future amendments to the IHR, and they do not change Australia's treaty-making or domestic legal processes. Australia does not and will not support any amendments to the IHR that are against our national interests. countries retain sovereignty over all their health policies, including public health and safety measures such as broader measures, use of masks and vaccines. Any negotiated commitments that need to be reflected in Australian laws have to be passed by this parliament for them to become legally binding, and Article 59 does not alter this. The first chapter of the revised draft treaty circulated to member states on the 22nd of May reinforces the principle that each country retains responsibility and control of its own health policies.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Babet, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Now, can you please clarify Article 10 of the WHO CA+ and whether it is requiring a member country or state to indemnify vaccine manufacturers and establish compensation schemes for the injured to be paid for by the government? Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. Thanks, Senator Babet, for the supplementary. This is one of the many proposals set out in the current draft text of the WHO CA+. None of the articles in the text have been agreed to by member states and remain under negotiation. Article 10 of the draft WHO CA+ proposes liability risk management frameworks for medical countermeasures, including vaccines, and the text as currently drafted proposes the establishment of regional and/or international vaccine injury compensation schemes. It also encourages member states to include time-bound indemnity clauses in contracts for the supply or purchase of vaccines specifically developed for the pandemic response. And in line with my previous answers, we will continue to consider these issues as part of our overall negotiating position, and I'm sure the Minister for Health would be happy to engage with you, Senator Babet, on these issues.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Polley.
President, my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health, Senator Gallagher. Can the Minister provide an update on how the Albanese government is delivering on its commitment to introduce Medicare urgent care clinics across Australia? How are these clinics helping Australians access affordable health care when they need it, and how are they helping to alleviate pressure on hospital emergency departments?
Thank you, Senator Polley. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and it's so great to get a question about the health system from you, Senator Polley. I appreciate it, and all the work that you do, particularly on the Community Affairs Committee and others, where you've spent a lot of time in recent years, and for your interest in health and in the Tasmanian health system in particular. At the last election, we promised to establish Medicare urgent care clinics, and we are delivering on that promise. The first of 58 Medicare urgent care clinics across Australia are opening their doors and already helping Australians get timely and affordable access to the health care they need. We have committed funding over 5 years to establish these Medicare urgent care clinics. It's a new approach to providing care for people who require medical treatment urgently but don't need an ambulance or a hospital stay. The urgent care clinics provides another option for people to seek medical care that they need. They're open extended hours, 7 days a week, and many of these clinics are being established in existing general practice and community health centres to make best use of existing facilities and leveraging the existing workforce. All of the services provided by Medicare urgent care clinics are bulk billed. I can hear Senator Henderson, she doesn't like urgent care clinics, doesn't like people being able to access health care. I know I shouldn't respond to interjections because Senator Henderson is such a serial offender. These are highly popular models of care. Highly trained doctors and nurses provide care at the Medicare urgent care clinics with no need for an appointment. Again, very convenient for busy families on the go. The urgent care clinics deliver service from the time people walk in right through addressing their health issue so that they can leave without putting pressure on the emergency departments. Last week in Tasmania, the Prime Minister officially opened the Medicare urgent care clinic at Your Hobart Doctor on Bathurst Street. In its first 2 weeks, Senator Polley, it has seen 400 patients.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Polley, first supplementary.
President, can the Minister outline how local health needs are being incorporated into the planning and delivering of the new model of care? How are the Medicare urgent care clinics being integrated with existing health and hospital health services, including general practice and hospital emergency departments?
Thank you, Senator Polley. Minister Gallagher.
Senator Polley, it's really important that the Medicare urgent care clinics are integrated with services provided by both GPs and by hospital emergency departments. By working closely with states and territories, we are ensuring that the services provided by these clinics are responsive to the needs of local communities, and we're working with GPs and PHNs to ensure the urgent care clinics are set up to deliver the end-to-end care that they need from these clinics. By working to ensure the quality of services provided by urgent care clinics, we will help ease the pressure on hospital emergency departments, and we know that we need to relieve this pressure. It's what the states and territories are telling us, and for anyone who has tried to use an emergency department will know. In New South Wales, for instance, it's estimated that almost half of emergency presentations to New South Wales hospital EDs are for semi-urgent or non-urgent conditions that are better off treated in these urgent care clinics, and we look forward to seeing them develop in the next few months.
Minister. Senator Polley, second supplementary.
Yes, President. How do the Medicare urgent care clinics complement other actions that the Albanese government is taking to strengthen Medicare and improve Australia's primary health care system? Why are these actions vital to ensuring Australians continue to have access to affordable, high-quality health services?
Minister.
Very much, Senator Polley, and again for your interest in healthcare, because we know those opposite weren't interested when they're in government, and they're certainly not interested now. The government is determined to strengthen Australia's health system after a decade of neglect, and one of the priorities that this government has been pursuing through National Cabinet by working with states and territories. Remember that under the former government they never really were able to work with states and territories. They like to pick fights with them. But we're working with states and territories to make sure that these urgent care clinics can be delivered in a seamless way, that they're integrated, that they support general practice, that they work with the hospital system, and most importantly, that people who need to access health care out of hours on the weekend, when your kids get sick, when they break their arm, and you don't have any other options available, this government's backing you by funding urgent care clinics to make sure that they are available to meet your health needs.
Thank you, Minister. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. And as that's the last question for the week, I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.
Thank you. Senator Watt.
Thank you, President. In question time yesterday, Minister Gallagher took elements of a question asked by Senator Hanson on notice. I've written to Senator Hanson to provide a complete answer because the matter's stretched into a portfolio that I represent, and I now table that answer for the information of the Senate.